Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I look at the 1993 Score Select baseball set. This is a weird set because it never really had its place in the hobby. I mean, over in football, they had a 93 set, a 94 set, then no 95 set, then they did have a 96 set, and then they did not have a 97 set. Hockey, they barely could get the thing to go. Select never really found its place in the hobby, and that's in part because the way that it started out was not exactly all that well anchored down anyway. It was a part of the fourth explosion in cards. There are these four stair-step years. There's 1981, 1989, 1991, 1993. In 81, that was the year when Topps finally had competition. 1989 was the year that the hobby expanded out and became a fully rounded hobby. 91 was the year for the premium brands. And in 1993, that was the year of ultra premium brands. And so those 4 times were really critical because there was so much activity that happened all at the same time. And for the ultra premium brands, there was kind of like in 1991, there was the 1990 the creation of Skybox, Leaf, and Action Packed, or Action Packed had already been around. And so there was kind of a precursor that everybody was reacting to in 1991 for premium brands. In 1992, Topps sent out a warning shot with their release of Finest in football, so that by 1993, everybody already knew there was going to be a whole new level of sports cards. And whether they were already intending on creating their card sets or not, that was a very clear message that everybody knew to react to. And Upper Deck created SP, which was the standard bearer for ultra premium brands, and it remained that all the way through as kind of the base level. With Fleer, they did a really good job with Flair of making a card that was just really fancy and expensive and high-end. It just kind of felt that way. Even though it wasn't a very innovative card, it was just a well-crafted card. Pacific, on the other hand, made a card more in line with Finest, where they made a card that was essentially an insert card that they just made as an entire set. A bold move, one that wasn't really noticed too well. But over at Pinnacle, things were strange for a number of reasons, starting off with the fact that the the company was Pinnacle, and yet their high-end set, or what presumably was a high-end set, was Score Select. I mean, you look at this card, and this is a really innovative card. It's got some strange diagonals that make the card energetic and kind of lively and almost unsettled in a way. They have a wonderful two-tone green border that's a nice nod to the 1988 set. The Score Select logo is phenomenal. Even on the card back, they have a nod to the design of the front. The way this card is designed is just great. But that's the design. And part of the problem that we have with this card set is that, look, we've got all this stuff going on, but you'll notice that logo, Score Select. Why did they choose Score? I mean, in 1991, Score became Pinnacle brands. Didn't exactly become Pinnacle brands, but all of a sudden the card company was known as Pinnacle and Score was part of it. So here we are in 1993, and they're making this new set that they're branding to Score, not to Pinnacle. Which makes you wonder, are they branching out and having the Score side and the Pinnacle side? Is this supposed to be fancier than Pinnacle or not as fancy as Pinnacle? It doesn't really have a natural home. And more significantly, the construction of the card is really bizarre because it's made of the same cardstock that 1990 Pro Set was made out of. But look, in 1990, Pro Set was a very innovative card, and the cardstock was very innovative. It's 93. It's not innovative. I mean, for crying out loud, in 1991, when Fleer created Ultra, they made it with the same cardstock, and they got panned. They had to fix this. And so here we are in 1993, and for some reason, Pinnacle is using the classic cardstock of 1989 and 1990. They're using that on this card that is supposed to be high-end. Well, they would have to fix that, because if you're creating a card that is reminiscent of 1991 Ultra, that's a problem. I mean, for crying out loud, Pinnacle in 1993 had a glossy surface and it had gold foil. It had all the things you needed, and here none of that was present. And they would definitely get caught sleeping. And it's not like this was a card that they were trying to pass off as just kind of a little bit better than Score. I mean, the boxes for this release were magnificent boxes. So they were clearly advertising this as a high-end card set. So why they would make a card that was less well-made than Pinnacle, who knows? Regardless, we'll be getting back to that aspect in a minute. But first off, the card design, they did lay out the card set in an innovative way. There's almost no subsets. The cards are distributed out so that it's all random the way that everybody's laid out. But the card design, it changes. So you obviously have vertical cards with the border on the left. You also have them with border on the right. You have horizontal cards with the border on the left, horizontal cards and the border on the right. And even the card backs jump all over as well. So it's possible, if you look across the entire set, you can probably find examples of each of the 16 combinations of the front and back borders. This was a card set which intended, when you looked at it, to always be changing and evolving, and that's a bold move that they would thankfully get away from in 1994. But 1993, like I said, it was a card that was supposed to be, design-wise, pretty innovative. But they didn't want to be doing something like they were doing in Score or Pinnacle, where they had a whole bunch of subsets. Here, they just wanted to get down and make a simple, straightforward set. So they got the main cards. The rookie prospect cards are done exactly the same way. They just have a yellow band at the bottom of the picture with the text for rookie prospects. Only change for these cards, although that band does stand out. And then the 1992 rookies are done in the same way, but with an orange band. And what the difference is between a 92 rookie and a rookie prospect, I don't know. I don't care. But one thing is for sure, they're not the same thing as the draft pick cards. And these cards are done, these are the only cards done in a different way. Band at the top, band at the bottom. You have pinstriping with 2 tones of green. And then in the middle, it's kind of like an ode to the hot gun cards in 1990 Score football, where they got rid of the background and they just put clouds. But unlike hot guns, where they had close shots so it looked like it could have been a photograph of a player with a great sky behind him, in this case, these are true cutout shots where in some cases it's like the player is jumping off a trampoline. In other cases, it just looks like they're plastered onto it. Still, these rookie cards look really, really cool. So, that was the set. That was all they did for it. These were cards that were not manufactured in a way that was innovative, although the design was, and the card set was intended to be very stripped down, where the cards were supposed to be the whole thing, only, again, they would need to make better cards. But the inserts was what Select really was sold around, because when we think of Dufex, we think of Pinnacle, and for obvious reasons. But in 1993, we did not make that association. In 93, Dufex was a Select thing. That's what the inserts were. They were all done with Dufex. And you can see right here from the Aces cards that the Dufex was still kind of primitive. They were working on developing it. Here, this is a card where every single player, every single pitcher is right on what looks like a playing card, but it has a radial fan around the outside. The diamond in the middle has an etched metal red color to it, and then the player, it's just kind of like he glows in the middle. Nothing too complex about this card. And so that you know, they're all diamonds because, well, the pitcher's mound is right in the middle of the baseball diamond, so that's the only suit they could use. But the card doesn't have the adventurous quality that we would see starting in 1994. The same can be said for their Select Chase Stars. Here, this is a card where down at the bottom they have the border, which is kind of a nod to the main set. Just a hint, it still has the radial pattern for the Dufex, but the logo for Select down on this card is a very complex Dufex effect that looks more like the cards we'd be used to. Again, the background is an etched effect, and then the player just kind of glows. Still not very complex. And likewise, when we go over to the Chase Rookies, well, this is the same except they use red instead of green. But once again, this is a card that is done in the same way, where it's all about how exotic the Dufex looked. And that's the big thing with Dufex. In 1993, they didn't have to do anything complex because this alone was incredible. This was going on at the same time that over in Upper Deck, they were in football, they were doing their version of brushed metal cards for their rookies. So even for baseball collectors, they weren't even seeing this over in Upper Deck in baseball. Very, very cutting edge. And then they also had a small set of 3 cards for the Triple Crown winners, where this is a card that doesn't even have Dufex on it proper. It does have the etched effect for the background behind the player. The player again kind of glows, but the border is just a really nice fancy card. These cards were tough to get, but they just didn't have the jump off the page look that the other insert cards had. And there's one other insert set that relates to this, but it relates. It is the Score Select Stat Leaders cards that were released in score packs. So these were done like a preview set. This is a big set, a whole lot of cards in this, and you can see from the design that has very much a nod to Select, the spirit of Select, even though it doesn't quite look the same way. And this is a big card set where it's focused on the stats, so that means the players show up on more than one card, and in cases where you have 2 players who have the same stats, they stick them both on the card. So the card set is chock full of players, but again, it's a score release, not a select release, even though these are score select cards. So that's the way it came out. It really is a preview set. And that was what they did for the main select release. But like I said, this was a case where the cards were really kind of embarrassing in how they were created. While they had everything they needed, they weren't utilizing the opportunities of what made cards seem fancy, which you would see over in SP with a glossy surface, some gold foil, or in that case, copper foil. Select needed to do the same thing, so Pinnacle, for their Rookie and Traded set, actually made that change. They first off used blue and black, which is a lot more exquisite. They have gold foil on the card, and they also have a glossy surface. So now the card stock is more like Pinnacle. Now the cards are looking fancy, and they look like they can stand directly alongside SP. In fact, for those of us over in football, right from the outset, this is what we saw. We got these cards with a cranberry design, but the cards that we got over in football looked like they could stand directly alongside SP. And we were debating about which card was better. Was it SP or was it Select? That was a football conversation. Over in baseball, there was not that conversation, because by the time Rookie and Traded came along, this was cool and all, but it was still in the shadow of a preliminary set that just wasn't as good. So like I said, the Rookie and Traded set, exquisite cards. And the rookies here, instead of having a color band, they have a whole gold foil band, which again makes these cards just look luxurious, and they look like cards that were supposed to go head to head with SP, if not outdo SP. This was where it certainly looked that way. And for inserts, they didn't do a lot here, although they did do 3 SP cards that were pretty impressive. They did 2 cards related to the Rookie of the Year players for both AL and NL. Tim Salmon and Mike Piazza were the 2 players, very much a Southern California kind of a year. And the cards have an interesting array of Dufex, where now the card is starting to look more like the Dufex we're used to. It still has the radial patterns, but they have more radial patterns going on. So there's an interplay on the card that makes this card a lot more interesting to look at. Both cards are done the same way. But they also had another SP card, a lot harder to get, which was a tribute to Nolan Ryan, his salute card. Here, this is a horizontal card with a big expanding circle effect in the card, and even the text on either side has its own effect going on as well. This is a card that is absolutely not going to be missed in a display case. This is always going to stand out. An incredible card, and it really does feel like the Dufex that we would be knowing starting in 1994. But these SP cards are really, really tough to get. I mean, for crying out loud, the odds of getting one of these cards is about, I think it's 1 in 3 boxes, maybe 1 in 4 boxes. That's the odds of getting one of these, which means if you would get a case, you'll probably get 2 of these cards, but not all 3. That's how hard they are to get, and the Nolan Ryan cards, really tough to pull out of packs. But thankfully, they did have an insert set that went along with the rookie and traded that was easier to get, which is their rookie all-star cards, or their all-star rookies, I think is what they called it. These cards are much more toned down, a little bit of defects at the top, a little bit of defects at the bottom, and then the middle of the card is kind of like what we've been seeing. And that brings it to a close. Unfortunately, they didn't do anything more with this set because in 1993, we still weren't really into a lot of insert cards, but at least in Series 1, they did have a pretty good number of insert cards, even though it was really tough to pull out of packs. But that was the thing. The thing that really carried Select in 1993 was the inserts. It was not the cards themselves, although they were starting to get to that point. Now, I'm not going to continue on with 1994. I'm going to look at that in a separate video, but I will tell you that in 1994, instead of making a more exquisite card, they did the same thing that SP did, which is that they kind of diluted the card. Still, it was pretty cool, but it was moving more in the vein of Pinnacle, as opposed to seizing the opportunity of making a higher end card. But look, that was the same case with Flare. It was the same case with SP, same case with Prism. It was really only over at Leaf where they made Limited where we were seeing an actual leap forward for ultra premium cards. At least in terms of the sets from 1993, none of those made that extra leap. And Select, again, would not really distinguish itself from Pinnacle in the years to come. But at least in 1993, they certainly wowed the entire industry, one, with their inserts, and two, when they got around to it, with a really exquisite card when they added the gold foil to it. But the base set was not where that happened. So, that's my look at the 1993 Score Select set, and also the Rookie and Traded set. So, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, I urge you to do so because I love looking through all these different sets, breaking them down individually. So definitely do that. Check out the other videos. I've done all of Score, and I've done, I think, all of Pinnacle for baseball. So I've got all of those covered. I will be doing the Select sets in weeks or months to come. So look out for that. And thank you very much for watching.